Guys, this is cielshock from CTUSA Mini 4-Wheel Drive Racing Squad, and I'm a teacher here in New Works.
And I'm Christine from Toronto Mini 4-Wheel Drive.
And today we're going to talk about VS Chassis.
But before we start, we want to say shout out to Newport's Team Chubby, especially to Larry Apostol, Team 8PM, Tuners North Mall, and Team Turf California, and especially to all Toronto and Winnipeg racers.
Yay! And also I want to say shout out to JHT Mini 4-Wheel Drive. He got all your copy parts and original Tamiya Mini 4-Wheel Drive needs. DY King, he also got your Mini 4-Wheel Drive needs in the Philippines. Also shout out to Sir Joey, SRB, GSR, Sir Alex Rion, and to all the New Works racers all over the world. And today we're going to talk about your favorite chassis.
Of course.
The VS chassis. So we got Barcelona over here, and the actual literally Barcelona. And we're going to talk about everything. Imagine this. This is 1999. Super X chassis is already out. TZX chassis is next, but VS chassis is up there. So we're going to talk about the stats. We're going to go in-depth, the history about it. And Christine's going to help me.
Of course.
Tell you all the stats with our favorite chassis again, VS chassis, in 2 seconds. Okay, so the VS chassis is a Mini 4-Wheel Drive chassis released by Tamiya in February 1999. According to the manga Mini 4-Wheel Drive Fighter 5, the VS stands for Victory Spirit. It debuted with the release of Blazing Max. The VS chassis have an 80mm wheelbase, which is common to other chassis too. The chassis continues with a compact lightweight concept from the Super 1, and the VS chassis having the batteries lower to the ground compared to the Super 1. The gear cover is not attached with the chassis instead of the motor case. The front bumper is W-shaped with the multiple screw holes from the parts attachments. Power transmission is efficient for further polish and surpass the Super 1's capability. Those improvements make the VS chassis high-performance chassis available. However, there are a few weaknesses. The front bumper is weak, prone to brakes. The chassis frame itself is soft, and it may lead to power loss. In certain circuits, the chassis twists too much. VS chassis machines tend to course out because of this fast approach in the cornering. That's why the box stock from the box have O-ring rollers. Overall, the performance is very similar to the Super 2, but with the less adaptability. Super 2 will be released in further years, but in 1999, VS chassis is really dominant when it comes to speed and cornering. Back in the days, it was one of the fastest acceleration chassis ever made. So that's the general view of the VS chassis, and now we're going to go to the stats, which is we divided it to 6 stats again. This will help us determine in which category VS chassis is really good, and what are the strengths and weaknesses on it. So we're going to go to stats in 2 seconds. Alright, so as usual, we divided the stats into 6 categories, with its maintenance, adaptability, toughness, acceleration, cornering, and stability. These stats will determine how will you compensate your VS chassis to its strengths and weaknesses. And again, it's straight out from the box. It's not from the modded or the customized version of your car in a specific category. This will help you determine how you're going to improve and maximize the capability of our favorite chassis, VS chassis. And now we're going to start into toughness. Alright, so toughness. Toughness of VS chassis is low 2.9, which is very low when it comes to other Mini 4-Wheel Drive, besides Super 1 and the other chassis, because the W shape in front of this chassis is really, really weak. It's soft and flimsy and fragile. So that's why when the car goes fast in the cornering, it twists a little bit and it will create power loss. That's pretty much explaining why it's 2.9. And also the chassis straight out from the box is really, really soft. Like when you touch it, you will know how flimsy it is because it's made of ABS plastic. But obviously you have the hop-up parts, which is like the reinforced ones, which is I recommend, and they also have the lighter ones, which is the fluorescent, but it's a little bit weaker. But that's pretty much it for the toughness, and it's low 2.9. But again, you can overcome this weakness when you modify the chassis. Alright, next to our stat list is acceleration. Acceleration of this chassis is obviously very, very high, which is 5. Its transmission is very, very efficient. And the chassis itself is light, so it accelerates really fast. And also, straight out from the box, whether it is a small diameter or a large diameter, the car is still light. That's why the acceleration is really amazing with this car. So if you're really looking for a fast accelerating, good and fast in cornering chassis, VS chassis is a way to go. But yeah, in box stock, I would say it's very, very tough to make it stable. One thing I'm gonna say with the transmission, the transmission is very, very smooth, and the length of chassis is very, very short. That's why it's really good in acceleration. And the next stat is my favorite stat, which is cornering. As I've said, VS chassis is very, very short, so it's very, very quick in corners. So if you're picking a chassis that's really, really fast in cornering, if you can compensate the twisting and the weakness of the toughness, this would be a good car. So that's already a hint that this car can be competitive when it comes to speed tech category, because once you overcome the toughness, the car is already good in acceleration and cornering. Alright, so the next is stability. The stability of the VS chassis I'm not surprised, is 2.9 straight out from the box. Because I've said earlier, the toughness is also 2.9, so the stability suffers when the chassis is not tough. So that's pretty much like a common sense. Like if you're not tough, obviously you're not going to be stable. It's not going to be, the chassis is not going to handle the high power motor or the acceleration and the cornering speed if the chassis is not tough, so the stability suffers. But obviously there's our ways that we can compensate that stability issue and the toughness issue, and that's what we do when we mod the car, in what category that we're gonna use it. So that's stability for you, which is 2.9. Coming up next is adaptability. The adaptability of this chassis is 4. You have a lot of extra holes up front because of its W shape, and it's also have the 3-point attachment in the back and 2 extra holes for the rear, which makes the car a little bit more adaptable compared to Super 1, T and TZ and FM chassis. But 4 is a high stat for me already, that you can mod the car. So that's the adaptability, which is 4, and that will help you decide, like, also when you're picking up the chassis. Adaptability is very, very important when it comes to determining what kind of chassis you're going to use in a certain category, because it determines how much work you're going to do with the chassis if we're able to put all the hop-up parts. Because if the adaptability is low, it's pretty much you're making a new reinforcements in a new way, and new holes for the chassis to adapt to the parts that you're gonna put. So that's adaptability. Again, it's 4. So we're moving on to the next stat, which is maintenance. Maintenance of VS chassis is not that bad. Maintenance is 3, which is, from some people it's low. But me, myself, personally, 3 is good enough, because you're just gonna, like, it's probably the hard part of for maintenance for this car is like cleaning and like removing all the oil and try to clean the gears and stuff, because there's a lot of tiny spaces when cleaning it. But 3 is all right for me. It's just like let's say a yay stat. Like happy medium stat, like 3 for maintenance, because there's some chassis there that's really hard to clean. Especially me, I find MA chassis, which is really hard to clean, but other people thinks it's really easy to clean. But for me, MA is I will not say the word, but I don't like cleaning MA chassis, but VS for me is easier. So yeah, so maintenance, ease of maintenance. There's a lot of maintenance to do with VS chassis. For me, it's easy. It's the stat is 3. So now we gonna go through the technical details with the help of our very own Miss Christine Barcelona in 2 seconds. Now that we're done with the stats, we're gonna talk about a little bit of technical info with the help of Christine over here. So we're gonna start with the length.
All right. So the VS chassis, the length of the VS chassis is 145 millimeter from here up to here. Not this one, but this one.
Great. All right. So straight from the box, the chassis from that part that she showed you guys is it's a little bit shorter compared to other chassis. That's why the VS chassis is good and fast in cornering to begin with. And now we're gonna talk about the width.
The width is 90 millimeter from this one and this one, and also this side up to here. It's 90 millimeter. So
it's 90 millimeter because it's a little bit wider compared to Super One and other chassis. But yeah, from here and there and right there is 19 millimeters, which is straight up from the box. It's a good stat. So and then the next stat is the wheelbase.
The wheelbase of the VS chassis is 18 millimeter from from the first the front wheel up to the rear.
Yep.
This one.
So the gap between over here is 80 millimeters. Which is normal. Like other chassis have that, even the Super 2 and the Super 1 and other chassis, except from a longer chassis like Super X or Super TZX or Super TZ. Which also, that's why it's good in acceleration. And also the ground clearance.
The ground clearance is 5 millimeter.
If you have a large diameter like this. So this is an example of a large diameter. So if it's untrimmed straight out from the box, the clearance from the chassis and the ground is 5 millimeters. So if you think about it, if you have large, if you have Speed Tech or J-Cup setup, that's how you determine how much brake you're gonna put. Also in small diameter,
it's just 1.8 millimeters.
So if you're rocking a small diameter, let's say this is medium, but if you have a small diameter, it's smaller to this, and it's closer to the ground, that's 1.8 right straight from out of the box. So that's very, very low for better landing, which is like closer, and then it will like slightly like jump off the track because of the smaller wheels, and the gravity that's pulling is more because it's really closer to the ground, especially when the battery is already there. So that's a good style when you're rocking small diameter or a large diameter. So that's how you determine your brake also. So the drive shaft,
it's just 60 millimeter.
Yeah, the drive shaft is 60 millimeter, which is from the propeller, like where the propeller is up to where it's attached to the motor. So that's 60 millimeter, which is the power of the motor going to the front and from the rear is good. That's why the acceleration of this chassis is good. So the compatible gears are 5-1, 4-2-1, 4-1, 3-7-1, and 3-5-1, which is, it's very adaptable because you don't need the extra special gear cover that FM needs, the Super FM and the FM chassis, TZ and Super 1 needs. You already have that cover, and every gear is compatible with this chassis, which is very adaptable. It's very good, like especially we're talking about year 1999,
yeah, 1999,
which is good. The down thrust of the angle,
it's 6.5.
6.5. So the down thrust is right here, which is a little bit low. See if you get closer. If it focus. Yes, there you go. If you can see, I don't know if it's focusing, but right there, it's working. Yeah. The down thrust for stock racers, and also people that doesn't like doing bumperless, but I highly suggest that you do the bumperless if you're doing Speed Tech, like Barcelona over here is bumperless. But the down thrust is 6.1. You gotta remember, from the box, from the stock racer, box stock racers, or any kind of stock racing, or people that doesn't like cutting the bumper. To begin with, it's 6.5, right? 6.5. Yes. All right. So the terminal type is
X-type.
So the X-type, so it's X-type. It's the same as the Super X chassis, Super X chassis, and FMA chassis. And the weight, this is surprisingly. Weigh the batteries, how light it is.
It's 114 grams.
So it's only 114 grams. Weigh the batteries. Why?
It's just 57 grams.
57 grams without the battery?
Without the batteries.
So without the batteries, it's 57 grams. So it's very, very light, and that's give you the ultimate speed and power when you're racing. And 114 with the batteries, obviously it depends what kind of batteries you're gonna put. But if you put Neo Champ in a loop, it will be probably lighter, or the Fujitsu or whatever your brand you're using. But overall, this chassis, those are the stats that we need to know. I mean, the more technical stats, like which for me, like I think this chassis is short, so it's good in cornering, and what else? It's lightweight, so it's good for acceleration, and that's our favorite. That's why it's our favorite chassis, because it's fast in cornering and it's light and it's good in acceleration. So we're gonna show you how to build this one in 2 seconds. Alright guys, now that we tackled all the stats, thank you Christine for helping me with that. Now we're gonna take a closer look with the VS chassis and we're gonna build one. Alright, so this is the VS chassis. This is actually the body. This is a fluorescent one. And this is what it looks like. There you go. We're gonna start from the top. This is the bumper of the chassis, which is the W shape, and this explains why the stability of this chassis is a little bit lower compared to other chassis, especially to the new chassis nowadays, because of this front is flimsy. All right. As you can see, there's also holes, which is make it a little bit adaptable, but not as adaptable as the new age chassis that we have nowadays, especially if you look at the FMA. The FMA got a lot of holes, but that's going to be a different video. So that's pretty much explained why the adaptability of this chassis is just average, and also the stability. And we're going to look at the rear over here. This is the rear part of the chassis. To all the people that doesn't know and haven't seen a VS chassis before, this is the rear part. And if you take a look at it, at the back, under the chassis, there's a hole over here, which is there's a screw hole that you can put lock nut, and also there's 2 screw holes right here, so you can put 3-point attachment to compensate the lack of toughness of this car. So the toughness and stability goes hand in hand. So if you make it sturdier, like what I did with Barcelona over here, Barcelona have a 3-point attachment right here, and I put all the reinforcements. As I've said, this stats is straight out from the box. So if you study this stats and you use this car, depends on what kind of category you're gonna use this chassis, then you're gonna be able to learn what stat that you can compensate based from the stats that was given by Tamiya. So yeah, so those are the 3 adaptable holes to make it tougher. The front, there's no holes right here, but in Jacob rules, or they call it the Tamiya International rules, you can make new holes. So you can, what I did with that is I put some holes over here and put some carbon to make it tougher, okay, and sturdier. So that's pretty much how you compensate the stability. I mean, there are different ways to make it tougher, but that's my way of making it tougher, like cutting it to bumperless. All right, there's also 2 holes. This is the wing of the chassis. And if you notice, there's a lot of holes in this chassis, which pretty much explains why VS chassis is the lightest chassis until now, next to FMA. Because there's a lot of holes. And obviously, this is a fluorescent chassis. That's why this is one of the lightest material for VS chassis. Also, if you take a look, closer look, the chassis is really short. So that explains why it's good in cornering. Christine gave you all the stats earlier, so you should be able to keep up with that. And also, if the transmission of this chassis is smooth, and besides that, it's also light. That's what I've said earlier. So that's why it's fast in accelerating, and that's what the explanation that they have given us. That's why the car is fast in acceleration and it's short because of cornering, which is, I think, that makes sense a lot, because they really want this chassis to be more on speed. They want it to be like power efficient. Okay, so one more thing. This is where you put your batteries. You place your batteries over here like that, like this. All right, and as you can see, it's lower. The center of gravity of this is lower because it's kind of like molded into shape. So it's lower to the ground compared to the older chassis Super 1. Because when this was released back in 1999, Super 2 was not released yet. Okay. So here's your body. VS chassis. They're very nice and adaptable when it comes to gears, because VS chassis, you can put every gear. The legal Tamiya gear, which is 351, 371, 4-1, 4-2-1, and 5-1. All right, so all those gears are allowed. You don't have to have that hop up part like in the Super 1 or TZ or Super FM that you have to buy a gear cover to fit a 351. But right now we're gonna use a 5-1. When I'm building it, I place the dish gear. This is a 5-1 dish gear right here, right in the left hand side. And I'm gonna show you the crown gears. I'm gonna show you all the crown gears. The crown gears is placed over this part right here. There you go. Alright, that's the rear part. Okay, at the front part, you're gonna place a gear right here. Let me grab another crown gear from our toolbox. If I find one, yep, there we go, I found one. Alright, so here's another crown gear. Pink crown gear, you guys gonna remember, pink crown gear and the carbon crown gear is the only crown gear that you are allowed to use when you're using a VS chassis, because the orange one will only fit the Super X, the Super N, the Super FM, and the FMA. And in Tamiya rules, you should use a pink gear or a carbon black gear. So it goes right there. Alright, so as you can see, it's all aligned here. If you take a look at the gap over here, which I put the propeller shaft, over there. That gap is very short, which is the wheelbase, and also that's how it explains why the chassis is fast when it comes to its acceleration. Okay, because the travel of the power going through the front is just minimal. All right, so that's how you place all your gears. You guys take another closer look. And also, you use an X terminal, which you can share with Super X FMA. You place it over here on top, like that. Alright, so you guys can see and follow. There you go. So the terminals, I'm going to dismantle it to show you again. It's like a snap-on thing. So this is the motor catch, motor holder, whatever they call it. Here's a 130 motor. Comes from the box stock. You pretty much just put this part, the flat part, and then hook it, and then it will automatically snap. There you go. And obviously you need a pinion gear that you put over here. You can use the purple one, the white one, or carbon. But that's how you put the motor. But the terminals, the short one goes like this. There you go. It's easy because you can just like snap it. Oops. Be careful because it snaps all the way. All right. It's very easy. Like to all the parents out there that looking like their kids to start. I would recommend VS chassis too. It's good that there's like nice box stock kits. So the terminal, that part should be hooked over there because that's where like the contact of the motor terminals is placed. All right, this one goes over here. It's also a snap thing. See, it's easy, and it hooks over there, and the terminal should be there. So that's how you put the motors again, and it is placed like this. Like you pretty much like put it on top like this, and then there's like a hooking part over there, right here. It goes through here. There you go. Should be a pinion gear, but I don't have one, so I'm just showing you how it's placed. Alright. So here's the counter gear of the 5.1. This is the counter gear shaft. And you pretty much put it on the hole right there. And then it's on top. So this also explains why the power is efficient. It's more on speed efficient. Because it's like a floating gear for me. It's like on top. There's less restrictions. Even though straight out from the box this can move. But there are ways to minimize that by using by doing floating gear and floating transmission. Here's the gear cover, and it's also a snap-on. There you go. It hooks over there, so you can see those two yellow parts. I'm using yellow parts so you guys can show you, because if this is like all orange, you can't see it. But now you can see the difference. So it's hooked over there. See those yellow parts? There's the crown gear. This is the front gear. The front cover. It goes right here, so it hooks right there, and then it also snaps. But before I forget, here's the switch. You put it on that part over there. Just slide it. There you go. Close it. Alright. I love using two-color chassis, combining two-color chassis. You don't have to if you don't want to. But I love doing the two-color chassis because I can see it. Like, I like the color combinations. Alright, so this is the lock. It hooks over here. It's pretty simple. Oops. And it goes like that. Oh. Am I doing it right? Man, I'm like a noob. Right there. So that's what's going to look like. So when you're putting the wheels, you put a bushing over there, or bearings, depends on what kind of category you're going to use it. And then you put the wheel shaft. But that's pretty much what it's going to look like. That's what the VS chassis look like. I love the color. Oh my god. It's orange and yellow. So hope I help you guys. It's pretty easy. It's all snap-ons. See, when you're removing it, I already like dismantle the whole thing. But yeah, that's my favorite chassis. Shout out Lord G for this wonderful VS chassis shirt. Just want to show you guys for my good friend Lord G. And yeah, so this is VS chassis. Thank you, Christine, for helping me from Toronto. And hope you like this video. To all the people that follow Christine, how she raised, I have some bloopers on the end of this video if you guys want to laugh, just for laughs. And again, this is Cielshock from CTUSA Mini 4-Wheel Drive Racing Squad, and I'm a teacher in Noob Works. And this is VS Chassis. Always race humble. Peace. What's up, guys? Guys, this is Cielshock from CTUSA Mini 4-Wheel Drive Racing Squad. I'm a teacher in Noob Works, and I'm with Christine today. Yes. What's up, guys? This is Cielshock from CTUSA Mini 4-Wheel Drive Racing Squad, and I'm a teacher here in Noob Works. And today I have a special guest with me. Please out ka lang. What's up, guys? This is Cielshock from CTUSA Mini 4-Wheel Drive Racing Squad. Ang tagal mo!
Akala ko sabihin mo pala, ang teacher Chuchu.
Ikaw na. Oh, ayaw mo na.
But before we start, we wanna say shout out to Larry Apostol. Mali!
Mali!
Before we start, we wanna say shout out to No Boards Team Chop. Yeah, cheap. But before we start, we wanna say shout out to No Boards Team Chubby, especially to Larry Apostol, Team 8 PM,
Yep.
Tuners North Mall, Tiff Turf Cali. Tiff. But before we start, we wanna say shout out to Team. Mali.
Ay,
No board.
What's up, guys? This is Cielshock from CTUSA Mini 4-Wheel Drive Racing Squad. I'm a teacher in Noob Works.
And I'm Christine from Toronto Mini. Oh, shoot! Bakit ako